Hey, welcome to the 24/7 Marriage Podcast. I am Javier, and I am here not with Shannon.
No, I'm not Shannon.
You are not Shannon, so you're much better looking than Shannon.
I'm sure McKenna would agree with
I
that.
am here with Freddy Garcia. Freddy Garcia happens to be my son-in-law,
Yeah,
my favorite son-in-law
yeah.
in this case, and
One of
my
one.
only one of one.
Yeah.
So he's got to be my favorite. But super excited to have him on the podcast. And like we said, from time to time, we're going to be bringing guests in. And there's a reason why we have Freddie here, not only because of his wisdom, his insight, and his incredible maturity at 25 years old. Uh, it's a little bit of a dig too.
That's what I thought.
Um, but really, we have towards the end of this, we're going to have an announcement about what we're going to be doing and what's up and coming with another podcast coming from the 24/7 Marriage family. I guess we say it's going to be the family of podcasts now.
Sure.
And so we'll talk about that here at the end of the podcast. But wanted to have Freddie on just to be able to kind of glean from where he's been, the journey that he has been on, and I don't say newly married, but married
3 years, 4 years this June.
4 years in June. And even in those short 4 years, so we're going to celebrate up and coming here 32 years of marriage. And I know there's a lot that you've learned in those short number of years, how you've grown in maturity. Have you grown in your marriage in areas where it has challenged you, maybe
Yeah,
surprised you even? So tell us a little bit first about you, a little bit about your story and how you arrived to like right now.
absolutely. Well, a little bit about me. Like Javier said, my name is Freddy. I'm 25 years old. Been married for 3.5 years now. And my life, if you would have asked me when I was 15, 16, 17, that this is where I would be in life, I would have told you were crazy, did not grow up in a Christian home. And so currently, right now, we'll probably skip all, 18 from now to 25.
Why
Uh,
is there things in there you don't want us to know
I just,
that you?
I think we just got to save it for a
But
different
it's also
time.
part of like what shaped you into who you are, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
sure. If that's what
Okay,
they
we'll
want to
save it
hear.
for another time. We
Okay.
will. All right.
Uh, God got my heart at the age of 19, changed my heart, changed my life, and it 100% changed the trajectory of my life and where I was headed. And so by faith, left my hometown, moved all the way to from Texas, moved all the way to Arizona, went to a Bible school, and that's ultimately where how I met your daughter, and
Yep.
now I'm blessed to be in a relationship with you.
Yep.
Um,
This
but
is a liar. You're gonna use the word blessed to be in a relationship
so
with me. You
favored.
tolerate. You tolerate me
uh,
at best.
yeah.
No, that's not true. He doesn't tolerate me. He actually likes me, which is, I mean, come on. How are you not going to like this?
What's not to like? What's not to like? You have an amazing
Speaking
beard.
truth. That's it. That's about it. Is that he loves the beard. Otherwise, beyond that, he's like, psh,
You also
that's
have
it.
great wisdom.
Do I?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, there's times where you just kind of challenged me, spoke life into me, and slapped me across the head when I needed to be.
But you know what's true is that even, and this is part of like what we'll talk about at the end is like, even where I'm at, like you have challenged me,
Mm.
which takes boldness, right? For a 25-year-old snot nose. No, you're not a snot nose. But like where he's at, and as a pastor, that's where you're currently at. You're pastoring at a church in Prescott, Arizona,
That's right.
as a student ministries pastor in Prescott in Quad City Church,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of wisdom that you have that you actually have challenged me and asked me questions, and then I've also pushed back at times,
Yeah.
and we've had back and forth like, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that,
Mhm.
and you might, and that's okay,
Yeah.
right? It's healthy. So the fact that we do like each other and enjoy one another, I think, is a good thing.
Mhm.
And okay, I interrupt you. Sorry.
No,
So
that's cool.
continue. So you met my daughter, and what happened?
So basically, within the first week, McKenna, his daughter, told me that I was the love of her life, that I was the one God had waiting for her. So she made that very clear. And so when I first heard that, announcement,
When you
never
were told you're gonna love me.
that's right. I told her, "You're crazy," but I believe that's what God told me too. And so it was just kind of like a match made in heaven. God spoke to her, God spoke to me, and as crazy as it sounds, that's truly how it felt. It just felt like no, no, the searching is over,
Yeah.
this is the person I'm going to pursue. This
Yeah.
is the person I'm going to make the decision to lay my life down for.
Yeah.
And so quickly, I would say our dating phase, right? Like as you discern whether you're going to pursue this person in marriage is very short. We both kind of knew very early on
Yeah.
that this is the person for
Yeah.
me. And I'm going to take all your strengths and weaknesses, and you're going to take my strengths and weaknesses, and we are going to do this journey together.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so I proposed at 7 months, 6 months,
Yeah.
6 months
Yeah.
of knowing her, and got down on one knee. Javier and Shannon were there. My parents were there, and I proposed at Sedona, Arizona, where the same place I asked her to be my girlfriend for the first time, and then I asked her to be my wife. Um, she said yes. Spoiler alert, thankfully.
Yeah. She said yes.
She said
I hope so
yes.
because you have a child together. So
We
we're
do.
hoping. Yeah. Okay.
And so, yeah, we got married. Probably we got engaged in January,
Yeah.
and then married by June.
Yeah.
And it was just like the training wheels were off,
Yeah.
and it was full force
Yeah.
adulting,
Yeah.
having to work, having to figure out that lifestyle. And so
Yeah.
it's been awesome. It's been obviously highs and lows as we've learned to navigate as a married couple. It's been highs and lows as we've learned to navigate just living with somebody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
ultimately, I think the best part of all of that experience is that we got to do it together, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm like as a husband before I engaged, before I proposed.
This is
She didn't
true.
know what she was like as a wife.
Yep.
And so we figured it out together. And that's kind of been the whole thing for
Yeah.
us. And so
Yep.
fast forward 3.5 years later, we are doing ministry together. She is a big part of what I get to do
Yep.
here at Quad City. There's honestly, like, the thing I like to say is that McKenna, if you ever seen Ratatouille, McKenna is the rat in the chef's hat, and I'm the chef. She's just kind of pulling the strings. I'm like the picture of it,
You're
but
telling me you're not leading in your home? Like what's happening? Like you don't have that like where God sets you as the head of the household. That's not it. It's McKenna.
Oh man, I will say on
I
that
hear you
note,
what you're saying because I'm married to her mom,
yeah.
so I do fully understand. Shannon's a little rat in my hat too. Yeah.
So McKenna, she is a strong-willed individual. She is a person who
No.
has her own individual
Yeah.
relationship with the Lord, who loves God, and that was one of the main things that attracted me to her in the first place, is how much she loved the Lord. And to me, for the first one of the main things I had always told myself is that I want to find someone who loves the Lord, if not just as much as me, more than me,
Yeah.
right? Because her walk with God has inspired me. Her walk with God
Sure.
has picked me up when I'm low, and vice versa.
Yeah.
My walk with God has picked her up when she's going through low seasons. And so,
Yep.
as we just navigated how this is going to work, our chemistry in marriage, just in our relationship, just in our friendship, it's been really awesome just to navigate that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
leading in my home, no,
But hold on for 1 second. So you guys know, like they actually courted,
yeah,
which is you may not have heard that phrase, and I hope that you have. Like it's this place of rather than dating, it's this intentional pursuit of one another for the intention and purpose of marriage.
yeah,
So very different from just dating. So McKenna is the very first person. You're the very first person that she ever dated.
yeah,
That she was in a relationship with, because she said, "I'm not going to give my heart away to others. I believe that God has that person for me.
that's right.
That He's going to unite me to." And the minute she said, "I do," you became that perfect person for her.
Mm,
Like that was it.
yeah,
There wasn't like no second guessing at that point. And so, like you guys courted, which was a beautiful thing.
yeah,
That's not common today to say, "I'm going to wait." And I'm going to intentionally pursue a person for marriage as opposed to giving my heart away consistently
yeah,
to other people. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a rarity.
absolutely.
And you guys got to share that with one another, which is good.
Yeah.
So,
On that, though, that has been one of the biggest testaments to me of God's grace.
yeah,
Because when
for
I
sure.
first had that conversation with her, this is probably like a month and a half of just talking to her on the phone. She hadn't come out to Arizona yet, and I was just still talking to her. And I'm being dumb, but I had asked her, like, "Ooh, who's your first kiss?" And her response was like, "Oh, I've never had a boyfriend in my life." And like immediately, like I just felt like I was in the wrong place, because not growing up in a Christian home, not really living for God. I knew of God, but I wasn't living for
You
Him.
kissed a girl before her?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Not just one.
no,
There were a few.
I've had my fair share of just bad decisions, bad mistakes, and so when kind of just being presented with talking to your daughter, and telling me I've never even held a guy's hand before, I just felt so ashamed, right? Like I felt
Mm,
like she deserved way better than this,
wow.
and so it was in that moment I was kind of challenged with, I could either just go, well, I'm at Bible college. I don't have to really bring up my past.
Yeah.
I could either just kind of run and hide behind it, or I could
Yeah.
just be honest with her and let her
Yeah.
know all of me. And so that was that moment for me, a really defining moment where I told her.
Yeah.
That moment I had communicated to her, I
Yeah.
want to let you know, like,
Yep.
before I gave my heart to God and started living for God, like I didn't do a lot of great choices. And I communicated, I'm not a virgin. And
Wait,
she's
what?
not a virgin.
You weren't when you got married?
No, I wasn't.
But the conversation we had was that seriously?
Side note, when Javier picked me up at the airport to
No,
surprise his daughter on her birthday.
which is crazy. I actually didn't know him, and we picked him up and flew him to Arizona.
Yeah.
We're like, there's no way my daughter is going to go to college in Arizona with you there unless I meet you and I know who you are.
Yes, but he denies this to this day, but on the way there, he asked me a bunch of dad questions,
So
like
untrue.
and then he specifically asked me, "I just need to ask you this hard question: Are you a virgin?" And I was like, "No." And his
I do not
response,
remember.
wait,
No, I don't remember
this
asking
was
that
your
question at
response.
all.
This was your response to me saying no. And he goes, so you've tasted the forbidden fruit.
I did not. That is not even something
I would
that I
not
would
forget
say.
something like that.
Probably in a joking way. That was probably me
He
trying to
was
make light
driving
of
his
things.
Subaru with the left foot like near the steering wheel, all laid back and chill, calm and collected. And that's the conversation I had.
Nothing that I actually remember ever saying that, but it probably maybe I'll give you that. That I'm sure it was like me trying to make light and joke. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So let me back up. So I tell McKenna this, and I just kind of open up to her, like, "Hey, this is where I was, and this is the past that I have." And her response was this, and this is like one of the main things that stuck out to me, and it still sticks to me today about McKenna's grace and mercy. She says, "This was her response." She says, "How can I judge you for who you were when I can see clearly where God's brought you today?"
Wow.
And when she said that, to
Dang.
me, that was that moment
That's
that I was
exactly the line I fed her. So that's perfect. It's great.
So yeah, she's just full of love and full of grace and mercy. And so it is cool to hear that McKenna, she's never held someone else's hand,
Yep.
but it's not like a picture perfect, Hollywood movie. Like I have my baggages and I have
Absolutely.
my story and my past.
Yeah.
But it's just a testament of God's grace
Yeah.
and mercy and his
Yeah.
redemption on his people, right?
Yeah.
God works everything out for the good of those who
Yeah.
love him. And
Yeah.
I truly am a living testament of that.
And it doesn't mean that she didn't come in with her own things and her own baggage.
Sure.
Like Shannon and I were not perfect parents. And I'm sure we
Sometimes.
messed her up in some places. I'm sure. But you did marry a person of strength.
That's right.
Who knows who she is, because what other parent drops their kid off at 17 years old to go to college in Arizona?
Yeah.
And then that she met a guy and to trust her. But I was like, yeah, she'll be fine because I know she knows who she is. She's very strong in that, and so had a lot of confidence in that. So yeah, I mean, it's an incredible journey you guys have been on, and there's this thing of like, kind of where we wanted to talk about a little bit today is this idea of like boys will be boys. And I kind of wrote some notes down here, so I'm gonna read it. But this idea of boys will be boys, that phrase that we've often heard, that is often used as an excuse for immature and irresponsible behavior. I see a lot of guys also who they are one person while they're dating, and then as they step into marriage, it's a bit different, right? Because they landed the girl, right? They were opening the car door, they were doing all these things to get the girl, and then what happened? That bill of goods. And we hear that from married couples all the time. Like, what happened to that guy?
Right.
Like, where did he go? And like now he's acting this way, he's being immature. Like, but there's this idea like, oh well, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
Right? Or he's just a kid. Whatever it is that they will say that. But from a like godly Christian perspective, that mindset's incompatible with like a biblical perspective of what it means to actually have accountability in marriage, to lead well in your wife, being a man that your wife actually married.
Wow.
Right? So that's what I want to ask you is, as you are at the age you're at, right? You're incredibly mature for the age that you're at, and have a lot of wisdom, and I love that. But you're also at a place where, how have you consistently been the man that your wife married? Because I know that guy, and I think you are still that man and progressing, but you also haven't done it perfectly.
That's right.
Because you've been through different seasons.
Yeah.
Because even just recently, like you left the Phoenix area,
Mm.
got a job in Prescott, Arizona at a church. So you new community, new place you're living, new job, and then all of a sudden you guys are pregnant
Mhm.
and the baby comes quicker sooner than you anticipated, a month
That's right.
early. And there's a lot of change and transition in one shot.
Yeah.
Like that's what you guys have been through even just recently.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that there's a lot there, but how have you been that man that she married, sustained that, grown in that, and but also learned from like where you haven't done it well?
Yeah. Uh, well, first of all, one of the main things that, kind of sparked, like, for example, opening up the door, it's because you did that,
Mm.
right? So McKenna expected that.
Sorry.
For a man to serve, no, for real. Like, McKenna expected that, and she didn't expect any less. So you did a great job just serving her,
Yeah.
and sacrificially loving on her.
Sure.
So that's kind of her standard. That's the bar
Yeah.
she expected from a
Yeah.
man. So there was, I hate that I'm just flattering you right now, but there is big shoes to fill.
What? But it's not even just flattery. Like I think people need to hear that. Like if you're a
Absolutely.
man listening to this and you have daughters, you should be setting the standard for
Yeah.
what your daughter should expect.
Yeah.
When it comes to the man they're going to date and marry or
Yeah.
court and marry, like you should be that standard. Like I want someone that seeing how my dad treated my mom
That's
or
right.
how he treated me, that's the kind of man that I desire.
That's right.
And if you're a dad and you have boys, you should be raising them that way, to honor, to
Yeah.
respect, to give reverence. Like do those things that are chivalrous that have become somewhat outdated in today's culture,
Yeah.
of opening the car door,
Yeah.
of holding the door open for a woman. Like all those things just to honor, right? The beauty of woman, but also like that's God's daughter.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyways, a side note, but that's like that I think that's important for people to understand. Like that's,
Yeah.
you need to do that.
Yeah, and just quickly on that side note, and Shannon, obviously, she demonstrated what a biblical woman looks like in the home. Obviously, not
Yeah, that's good.
perfectly, but
Yeah.
faithfully. And so
Sure.
McKenna has adopted a lot of Shannon, just trying to teach her how to be, the Proverbs 31 woman, and she
Yeah.
does that. And so,
Absolutely.
one, it makes that really easy for me because McKenna is someone I want to serve
Sure.
because she's such a great woman.
Yeah.
She's a great woman of God, and it's like, you just want to be nice to those nice people. And so in that sense, you just want to serve those people who are always trying to outserve you.
Yeah.
And so it's always like, it constantly going in my mind, like, man, if I'm not pulling my weight today, McKenna is, and it's kind of like, oh snap, I got to look at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But for opening the car door for her, that's just, it's so little. And some people, like you said, will say, oh, that's just old dated chivalry.
Sure.
But truly, that's like me trying to be faithful with the little.
Yeah,
right.
that's
I'm
good.
trying to be faithful
That's
with
good.
the little. Like
Yep.
we all want to say, I would take a bullet for my wife, but we won't wash the dishes for her.
Oh,
Like,
come on.
that's
Yep.
the little.
That's
we want to
true.
be faithful to much, but we're not actually applying that in the little things.
Just the day to day.
Right, the
Yeah.
day-to-day things. But
Yep.
no, I have not done that absolutely perfectly. There's some days, some weeks, some months, some season when I'm kind of off my A game. But truly, I think for me, it's my relationship with God that helps me to be the man of God McKenna needs
Yeah.
in her life.
Yeah.
And to the kind of man of God that McKenna needs leading her.
Yeah.
And so even in days where, you know what, if I were to grade my day as a husband today, it'd probably be a C.
Yeah.
Right. C's get degrees, but as awesome as McKenna is,
barely passing.
she deserves an A. And truly, 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 and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about just McKenna being in my life and God's grace and mercy upon my life. That truly has always stuck to me, that I don't deserve McKenna.
Mm.
So I should try to live every day knowing I don't deserve her.
Yeah.
And proving to God,
Yeah.
not proving to God, but showing God my gratefulness and gratitude towards
Yeah.
this gift he has blessed
Yeah.
me with, right?
Yeah.
Every perfect gift
Yep.
comes from the Lord. And I truly believe that's McKenna in my life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that drive,
Yeah.
that feel that just kind of keeps me going. And just, it allows me to be a man that when I look at McKenna and my relationship with McKenna, I desire to be her hero.
Yeah.
I desire to be someone she thinks about positively.
Yeah. That man worth following.
That man worth following. That's my desire in my heart. So I think about when I'm arguing with her, am I being, cunning? Am I just being like malicious or just trying to make her feel stupid?
Yeah.
Right? In her eyes, I don't look attractive right now.
Yeah.
I want to look attractive to my wife. And so I try to be intentional about how is my wife viewing me right now?
Yeah.
Do I look like a lazy boy?
Yeah.
Or a lazy boy who can't get anything done?
Yeah.
Do I look
Yeah.
like a argumentative boy?
Yeah.
Right? No, I want to be a man of God
Yeah.
in my wife's eyes
Yeah.
because she is the first witness
Yeah.
to everybody
Dude,
I encounter.
You have no idea the wisdom that you're spewing right now.
Wow.
And the fact that this is not just about like someone who's listening who's younger.
Sure.
This is like the men that we deal with on a consistent basis who come to a boot camp, who listen to this podcast, who download our resources. This is what they need to hear because they've lost that. They've forgotten about that. What's also interesting is that what you're saying now is recorded for all eternity in the podcast, and your wife's going to take that out and say, "You remember you said this? That you remember how you were called to serve me and love me, and how you're being like." But I mean, we're always raw and real on here. There's been times where you haven't shown up in that way.
Absolutely.
Like we talked about when. I remember having a conversation with you before the baby came and saying like, hey, I'm just for whatever it's worth. I just want to download this to you if you're willing to hear and receive it. It's like this is going to be a really intense season.
Yeah.
Not only, I mean, having a baby is just enough, but having a baby that's a month early, being in a new community, a new home, a new job, a new space, no really family and community around you, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And now there's going to be a little person who is taking your wife's time that you used to get. And so what was that like? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Like that's one of the seasons that you walk in the mirror like, hey, we're doing good. All the things that you just said are awesome. But then that hits.
Yeah.
What would you tell a younger Mary, but also just anybody in that season now, like what it was like?
Yeah.
What you learned?
So a huge part of that, and this is tying right back into opening the door, McKenna had this conversation with me because normally now when we're loading the baby in his booster or his car seat into the door, I'm the one usually doing it. And so when I used to open the door for my wife every time we got in the car, like she had probably touched a door handle twice in our whole length of marriage. And now when the baby came, I would literally just put the baby in his car seat and just walk right in my door. And I probably did that for the first 3 months.
Yeah.
And McKenna kind of goes, hey, like, this is not a big deal. I'm not trying to make an argument or try to fight with you, but
do you remember when
you used to open my door for me? And I was like, oh yeah. Like that, I did used to do that. Like I almost forgot I did. And that was almost automatic for me. I didn't even think twice about it. It's just what I naturally did. Like I breathe or blink. And her just saying that just kind of made me have a self-reflection moment. Like, man, I have been dropping the ball on that. But it's the new season of kind of a shock. Like you're in a completely new, different rhythm.
Yeah.
Not am I only just opening the door for my wife, but now I have to put a baby in the car and I get to open the door for my wife. I don't have to just
you what?
I get to open the door for my wife.
Open the door for your wife. Yes.
That's right. And so it's been easy for me to just have a self-evaluation because McKenna, she is a straight shooter. She's not going to sugarcoat things. She's going to tell me, hey, this is where you've been kind of slacking in this area. And I know her heart. I don't ever get offended unless it's, about my singing. But when she goes,
because he also sings, plays instruments, like he's like, definitely a Renaissance man. He can do it all.
But she kind of just tells me, hey, you've stopped doing this, or I would love if you just started doing this. And to me, that's like my wife is trying to communicate something to me. And I can either be a jerk and be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not the leader of this home.
Yeah.
Or I could take that great constructive feedback and how I can better serve her for the health of my marriage, right? Because I could easily just try to serve myself what's better for myself. You know what? I'd rather sit on the couch and watch TV and not do what you're asking me because that's better for me.
Sure.
But that's not the way we're called to live. We're called to deny ourselves, right? We're called to think of others as more important than ourselves. Yeah. And so is my comfort more important than McKenna's needs? Is my comfort more important than McKenna's desires and her husband? And so it's a moment for me to, okay, it's been a crazy season. New job, new community, new baby. We just had a moment, just January 3rd. We went on a date night. You watched our baby Phoenix, and we just kind of reflected on the past year, right? The past 6 months since we've been out here in Prescott, Arizona. And we kind of go, where have we been dropping the ball together, right? Where have you been dropping the ball? Where have I been dropping the ball? And where have we been dropping the ball as a family?
Who dropped the ball more?
100% me. 100% me. And we just kind of talked about, okay, how can we fix it?
Yeah.
And what are some goals? What are things we want to start doing? And we just kind of had this moment of our marriage matters.
Yeah.
Our marriage is a ministry, and it's always going to be my first ministry.
Yeah.
And so if I drop that ball, but think, oh, my student ministry is going amazing, I'm doing it wrong.
Yep.
I'm doing it wrong.
Yep.
I'd rather have a great marriage ministry and a poor student ministry because that is the marriage ministry that is a testament to the world.
You don't know right now what – I don't know if you recognize what you just said. It's interesting because we just talked about that on the podcast because we talked about cultural myths about marriage and what is a biblical, truth, right, to counteract that. And one of them was that, this is like your marriage is a ministry.
Yeah.
Like that is your first ministry to your spouse, that people would see Christ.
Exactly.
The image. Now, is it perfect? 100% no. But like your role as a pastor could be gone tomorrow.
That's right.
The student ministry could be gone tomorrow. The church could be gone tomorrow. And what is there? Your walk with God first and foremost, then your wife, and then your children. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think, especially like we know all this coming into marriage, and then we try to do all these things, then we get into marriage and all that shifts and changes. Mm-hmm. So what you just said is incredibly profound, and like that is what you need to make sure if you're listening to this that you're picking up on that. That is what your marriage, and it changes your perspective.
Absolutely.
If it's a ministry, because it's to honor God, and how are my actions, my words, everything honoring Him. Yeah. So you haven't done it perfectly.
No.
In your first 3, almost 4 years.
Yeah, not at all. And I want to clarify that. I feel like you keep saying I'm saying a lot of good things, and it's getting me a little hot-headed. But the reality of it is, I mess up a lot.
I can pick out all the mess ups. Yeah. Yeah. You want to go through those?
Sure. I make a lot of mistakes and I make a lot of mess ups, but it's when I mess up that I kind of evaluate, why did I mess up? What did I do wrong? We're arguing at the top of our lungs right now. How did we get here? And it's like that self-evaluation and self-awareness of me taking ownership and responsibility for my actions that I don't want to be here. So what do I need to do as a leader of my home to not lead us here again or not allow us to get to this point?
Don't you think it's easy to coast? Like,
yes,
it's so all these things early on in marriage or when we're dating, we get into marriage, but then we get to a place where we can take each other for granted.
Yes.
And we coast a little bit. Life gets tough. It's busy. There's a lot going on. She knows I would do that. She knows I love her. I used to do those things. Yeah. And we can tend to just coast. You and I suffer from something like that, like at times, and it's like ADD. Yeah. And we can be all over the map.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So, like, look, a bird. See, like, we can be gone in a moment. And so, like, I've seen it in you.
Yes.
And you've seen it in me. I've seen it in you in a place like, I know you'll get up and help and do the dishes and clean and do that. But then sometimes, like, if you don't, it's not because you don't have a desire to or want to serve in that way. There's times where, like, I just don't see it because I'm everywhere else.
Yeah.
I've done that too. It's so easy. Like, what have you done to prevent yourself from being a place where you're, even early on in marriage, where you're coasting? And to correct those moments where like, oh my gosh, like, oh yeah, I was doing that and I kind of stopped doing that. Because you can also get fixated when it's important. You get fixated on it.
Yes.
And I can do that too.
Yeah.
But then it's like the day-to-day can get like put over there.
Yeah. First, I invite people into my space. Like I give them permission to speak into my life, whether it's in the office here at work or if it's Javier, but most importantly, because McKenna spends most time with me out of everybody on this planet, just I give her the permission to communicate to me when I am not realizing I'm in that, trance, right? When I'm just, there's people working and I don't even think that people are working. I just see people moving.
You give her permission.
Yeah.
So you're inviting her into that place. Yeah. And you even tell her like, hey, this is how you can tell me?
Oh, 100%. It's definitely just say it nicely, protect my feelings. Don't just give me attitude and start yelling at me to get off on the couch.
You haven't, you never.
And most times she does. And then there's sometimes where she's a little flustered, right? She's a little,
for sure,
frustrated that I have not realized she's washing the dishes and there's still more to do in the kitchen. And I'm just chilling on the couch.
And she got baby on her hip.
And I'm thinking, wow, what a great day. We're just at home.
Look at like she's serving me. It's beautiful. Like I get to play a little video game right now, some downtime.
Yeah. Yeah. But just her communicating to me like, hey, can you just help me with this? And me having to drop my pride or drop my comfort and go, yes, let me be a serving husband. I need to get up and start doing something. I need to
Yeah.
get up and be a blessing to her.
Yeah.
And and it has gone most of the time very smoothly.
Yeah.
But also just kind of recognizing that for her, she has had to recognize that when I look like I'm just being lazy, I'm not gonna give myself all the credit, but like 6 times out of 10, I'm probably not. 4 times out of 10, I probably am.
I
But
get
6 times out of 10, I'm just kind of naive to the environment. I'm kind of just socially unaware what's happening. I'm just in my own head or whatever
Yeah.
it may be.
Yeah.
But she has had to give me patience upon patience and
Yeah.
grace upon grace,
Yeah.
not trying to belittle me,
Yeah.
but just, hey, just for the record,
Yeah.
communicate this to me with grace
Yeah.
and in love,
Yeah.
but most importantly in truth. Like you
Yeah.
are just sitting on the couch while people are working.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're
Yeah.
100% right. Let me do
Yeah.
something.
And there's a difference between somebody who is lazy and apathetic, and somebody who's like that's what they normally would do. That they just like right now they're unaware. And so I think it's important for a spouse to recognize like, hey, that's not who they are.
Yeah.
That's not really been the norm. Like, how do I approach this in the right way? So let me transition for a second because we're gonna wrap up. We usually only go about a half hour or so, but it's been a good conversation. I actually want to continue it, so we'll talk about what we're going to do and how we continue this conversation. Because I think everything you've said has been will have impact on those that are listening,
Mm.
regardless of like how long they've been married.
Yeah.
Because what you hit on things are what a lot of people need to come back to.
Mm.
They may have started that way, but like everything else, people say it's just life and busyness and kids and jobs and all this stuff happens. All of a sudden, we wake up and we wonder, how did we get to where we're at?
Yeah.
A lack of intentionality. But to grow in biblical manhood and even masculinity in your marriage, like you have to move to a spiritual maturity and discipline.
Mm.
And so, what would you say to people like if they're struggling in that area? How do they move to a place of getting back to a place of being disciplined, of being intentional, and resetting, especially as we are in a new year here? How do they reset to really become that man that God's called them to be, or just that spouse that God's called them to be?
Yeah. I would definitely just say God's mercies are new every
Yeah.
day.
Yep.
So if you feel like you've been dropping the ball for 3, 8 years, maybe 20,
Mm,
it's never too late
yep.
to just pick up that ball and make a decision. That's where I want to be.
Yep.
That's where I want to go. That's the type of person I want to be in making those consistent steps of getting there. If I
Yep.
want to be a man who is chiseled and has a six pack, make a game plan how I'm going to get there. If
Yep.
I want to be a man that my wife sees as worth following, make a plan and steps how to get there
Yeah.
and make the decision to do it. Be consistent, be disciplined, and just start working towards that.
Yeah.
I think for me, like truly, my wife is my biggest cheerleader, but she's also the person that I want to impress the most.
Mm,
I want her to adore me. I want her to think I'm the coolest guy ever. And so that really keeps me going that hey, if I've gained 50 pounds in our first year of marriage, I want to be a man who shows her that I can take that off.
mm,
I can start working towards that,
yeah.
right? Seeing where I'm not meeting the bar and actually be able to go, that's where I'm going to go
Sure.
and that's where I'm going to be. And
Yeah.
so I would just say, in that, just make the decision, make a goal,
Yeah.
make a plan to get to that goal,
Yeah.
and get people around you just to
Yeah.
hold you accountable in
Yeah.
that, right? Get
That's a big
other
piece.
guys around you just to make sure you're staying on top of those things.
Yep.
Doing weekly check-ins,
Yep.
evaluations, right? Hey,
Yep.
man, how did it go with that conversation with your wife that you were planning to have
Yep.
about that addiction you've been
Yep.
going through, right?
Yep.
Like just having some people come along you. And I think that's important with just community. It's not
Yeah.
just me and McKenna
Yep.
by ourselves figuring it out.
Yeah.
We have you guys. We have
Yeah.
a community around us
Sure.
helping us.
Yep.
Sometimes calling out our blind spots, right?
Yep.
Letting us know
Absolutely.
where we're not doing
Which is
great.
not easy to hear. It's not easy, when you hear that from other people.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely necessary, right? It's that whole thing, Matthew, iron sharpens iron. And
Yeah.
It really does. There's something you said, and I agree with it about, you want to hear from your wife, like, man, thank you for how you're showing up and loving me. And ultimately, I would say also is that, man, if you're pursuing your first love, God, if you're walking in your relationship and intimacy with Him first and foremost, then everything else falls underneath that and begins to fall into place. Am I saying you're perfect in doing that? No, but what I'm telling you is like love God more than anything and anybody else.
Yeah.
And then like you're going to find yourself dying to yourself and loving your spouse well because you're reflecting an image in Christ.
Yeah.
And out of that fruit within you, out of like what God is doing in and through you, that's going to come out and you're going to desire. And that's what makes it easier in those moments when it's difficult to lay myself down because I get to do that for her.
Yeah.
In the seasons you're going to have ahead of you where life happens and things take place and there's loss or whatever there may be, what you're sustained by is the foundation you're building right now. And that it's built upon him, period. And so I hope you enjoyed like this conversation. And part of the reason we were having this is that you can see there's a lot of wisdom that this young man has and that this young man has here too. It's just a little older than him. But what we're going to be doing is launching a new podcast here soon called The Wisdom Between Us. And it's really this place of understanding there's a lot that even in my age and my generation can learn from those that are behind us. From what they see and what they're experiencing that can affect and impact even me in my marriage and just me as a man, but also a lot of like what I feel I can impart and give into your generation as well, where you're at.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this beautiful give and take.
Yes.
And this idea of a podcast of talking about the wisdom between us, what we have learned, and also just discussing different ideas. Like, oh, you don't agree with that? This is where I stand on that. Why? And it may be a shifting of ideas, but just really, this is about marriage. It is about relationships. It is about discipleship. It is about our walk with God. And I think it's going to be women are going to want to listen to it also. But I think there's a lot of guys who are going to want to listen to this to really understand like the opportunity we have as an older to invest, but also to still receive and hear and watch from the younger generation.
Absolutely.
You want to add anything to that?
And I really love the raw part, right?
Yeah. So it's going to be what?
And rooted and raw.
Real, rooted, and raw. Because I think it has to be that. And we're not going to always agree on everything. I can already tell you that. And he's going to have to learn that I'm right most of the time, but we're going to get to that place over a period of time. And so, we went a little longer than we normally do. So appreciate you tuning in, leaning in this conversation. As you can hear, like there's a lot of wisdom that's coming even from a young age of what God has done. And for me, I'm proud that he is my son-in-law and that this is the woman, this is the man that my daughter is married and said I do too. So we appreciate you tuning in. Always remember, we are a partner-supported ministry. And so we value your support. We value you downloading resources, tuning into this podcast and being part of the 24/7 marriage family. And always remember that in marriage, you don't have to, you get to. Have an incredible week and we'll talk to you soon.
I've always wanted to do that.
For listening to the 24/7 Marriage Podcast, help us expand our reach by rating and leaving us a review on iTunes. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For more information on the work we do and how to support the 24/7 Marriage, head on over to 247marriage.org and click on Partner with Us. Until next week, remember, in marriage you don't have to, you get to.